You will get a My Future Point for this lunch lecture. You can receive it at the end. We will stand upstairs with the scanners. Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, welcome everybody for visiting our lunch lecture about preserving heritage. It's nice to see so many of you. So yeah, first a small introduction of RYSE, the company that we are. So we're basically a project management company, and we also give advice in real estate that helps clients from A to Z. So basically when clients don't really know what they want, but they know they want to have a new building or renovation or whatever, they contact us and we help them with all the ideas all the way through the realization until the building actually exists. As a company, we actually pride ourselves for our personal approach. We really sit down with the client and ask them what question lies at the heart of the question they're asking us. And besides that, I personally think that we're also a very fun company, not only in the projects that we do, but also with the people that work with us. For example, last Friday evening, we went to a padel court with about 40 of our colleagues, and we had a lot of fun. So we also work in a lot of sectors all across the construction industry. These are healthcare real estate. So, for example, we work with the Erasmus Hospital in Rotterdam, and also commercial real estate. We did the Westfield Mall of the Netherlands, for example, in RYSE Dam, and a lot of offices at the Zuidas in Amsterdam. We also do educational housing. The picture you actually see is one of the most sustainable educational buildings in the Netherlands, which is the Langeveld building in Rotterdam. And we also work in public real estate, so that's basically everything government related. So town halls and government offices. And that's also where the two of us mainly work in that sector. So quickly, before we're going into preserving heritage, I'm going to introduce myself and then my colleague will introduce herself. So my name is Machtel Sanders. I'm a project manager, advisor and financial advisor at RYSE. And currently I'm working on several projects of which I'm very proud, of which one is the Children's Book Museum in Utrecht. We'll go into that one a little bit more later on. I also work for a government office in Amsterdam Sloterdijk, which is called Gatwick. And I also have 2 town halls in my project portfolio, which is a town hall from Edam-Volendam and the town hall from Rede, which is near Arnhem for the people who don't know it.
Hello everyone, my name is Saskia Bruin. I'm also a project manager at RYSE, like Machtel, also the public real estate sector of our company. I work for Town Hall De Paauw in Wassenaar, which is also one of the projects we'll talk more about later. For Town Hall De Ronde Venen in Meidrecht, and for Flora Campus development in Westland, which is a very big area development. That's just a very small part of all the projects we do in our company.
Yeah, so I think you all know today we're going to talk about preserving heritage and monuments and why, in our opinion, that is important and how we handle that. But first, let me ask you all a quick question. And I want to see hands. How many of you have done a project where you can work from scratch? So like there's a building plot with no other buildings on it, or you can completely demolish the buildings that are there? Yeah, so the majority. How many of you have worked on projects where you have to take into account the buildings that are at the plot? So you have to leave them there, or you have to barely alter them in order to make your project work? Yeah, so that's slightly less hands. So that's exactly what we thought. It's very easy for people to just think, okay, we have a plot and we're just going to scrap all the buildings that are on there. But that's not always the best thing to do. I'm sorry, just a moment. So yeah, we actually think that it's really important to look into the buildings that are actually on your plot and research whether they have monumental value or not. And if they do, they have to be looked at with a different approach. Also because many buildings are historical evidence that is lost once a building gets demolished. So in the Netherlands, there are approximately 63,000 monumental buildings, which obviously is a lot. So you, at one point in your careers, you're gonna have to deal with them. And these buildings have to be maintained to preserve, among other things, the history of it. But in many cases, these buildings ultimately lose their original function because it's not fitting in contemporary times and they need adaptations. So why do we actually preserve heritage? Like I said, the easy solution is to just demolish the buildings, but monuments are actually living testimonies of everything that happened there. So they have historical, cultural value, and they have a certain identity. And they're also a means to get knowledge across from our generation to future generations. And also a thing that's very different from modern day buildings is that they are used with different materials and different techniques than what we nowadays use. So currently there's a lot of focus on sustainability and everything that is needed to accomplish that. But that's not always easy with monuments because some things of the building are protected and others just have a very specific material that you need to use as well and you just can't copy, and that's not always a sustainable option. But preserving monuments is actually quite complicated. And the things that make it complicated is, for example, derogation. So basically, lack of respect for a building can cause a lot of damage because that usually means that people don't maintain a building well enough, and actually a small defect can have a lot of consequences. For example, the entire structure can get damaged at some point. Also, it's customized work. Like I said, it isn't the easiest way to incorporate sustainability in the building. And when doing that, you actually have to match the sustainability options that you're thinking of with the cultural and historic value. So you have to balance that out. And the building materials and techniques are quite different, like I just said. So they also need a different approach than the usual modern techniques. And there are also certain guidelines regarding restoration and the quality that you need to follow. So then the question, how do we preserve heritage? And for that we have actually a very good tool, which is called the restauratieladder, oftewel or in other words, the restoration ladder, which is actually a tool for monument owners, architects, our clients, advisors, contractors, which help them make the right choices when it comes to preserving the heritage and alterations in the monuments. So actually, before even taking one step on the ladder, there always has to be a research conducted into the monumental value of a building. So that's always the first step. And the results of this research, they are actually the basis for all choices that get made further on for the steps on the ladder. So the first step is actually preservation and maintenance, which is the minimal step to take. It basically means that you leave the building exactly as is and you just fix the minor defects that are there to just stop the decay. The second step is to repair the building. So you actually replace or alter the materials that are damaged to make the building function for a longer period again. And you can add to some damaged parts. But this can also mean that you bring it back to a state that it once was in. So maybe alterations have happened that are further on the step and you want to bring back the historical value. And the last step is renewal. And this maybe sounds like creating an entire new building, but that's not the case. You still respect the building as is, but you copy a lot of the elements that are in the monument and you make them with new materials to fit the historical image. And that's also with what imitation basically is that you use the new techniques, the new materials to make it fit into the historic story. But you can also improve, and this is mainly where sustainability comes in. You need certain features to get the building up to the contemporary needs with all the energy labels and stuff like that. So these are basically the steps to take, and in the two projects we're going to show you later, we're going to show you exactly what the steps are that we have taken there. And you also may think that sustainability, like I said, it's quite difficult in monuments. You have to balance it very well, but it's still possible. It's not like because it's an old building, it's not possible to do anything about sustainability. It's always possible to limit energy needs with smart solutions and eliminate fossil fuels with innovative techniques. For example, by using a water source for the heating that is somewhere near. And we have experienced that it's actually always possible for monuments to get an energy label varying from label A to label A+++. So that's quite good given that you're working with an existing building. So, as I said before, we do a lot of projects in a lot of sectors, and we are very happy that we get to add more and more monuments to our portfolio. So a couple of them that we did already is the Drents Museum in Assen. We did the government building in Groningen. Actually an old town hall which was converted to a museum. A care facility in Kampen, which is also completely renovated on the inside to create housing for elderly people. And we did the Hembrug terrein, which is actually a former weapon production site. So that's also like a very big scale on which monuments also happen. So it's not just a small building, but also larger. Then I'm going to tell you a bit about one of the projects that I'm currently working on, which is the Children's Book Museum in Utrecht. So the current museum is located in Den Haag, and due to developments in that area, they have to leave. And they decided to move to Magazijn de Zon, which is a monumental building near the canals in Utrecht. And the building has a lot of monumental value, but it has to be prepared for the future use as a museum. And the interior functions need to align with the needs for the exhibition and the mission that the museum has. So a little bit history for the building itself. It was originally built in 1850 and was then bought by Willem Vroom and Anton Dreesman. May not sound familiar, but when I say V&D, I think a lot more people recognize it. It's a large department store in the Netherlands, and it was actually one of the first large department stores, and they basically developed a typology for department stores in the Netherlands. Over the years, a lot of alterations happened, and the building was basically built in phases. And the look that it eventually has, which you see on the picture, was realized in 1932. Eventually, the V&D moved out of the building in 1972, and then the public library moved in. And after that a bookstore and even the Nijntje Museum, which is also quite iconic for Utrecht. But the building is now empty because we're working on the preparations to make it a children's book museum. So the Municipality of Utrecht conducted a research into the monumental values, and they stated that there are 4 types of monumental values that this building has, of which the first one is architectural historical value, and that has to do with the scale of the building, which is quite unique at the canals in Utrecht. There are only a few of these large buildings. And also the aesthetic qualities and specifically the ornamentation that you see on the façade. It also has a building historical value due to the different functions that have occupied the building and, like I said before, the phases that the building was built in. So when you are inside, you can still see what was built first and what was added on later. Also the location of the building combined with the scale has led to an urban value because it's quite unique in such a dense area in the middle of the city center of Utrecht. And also the origin story of the large department stores from the V&D, the typology has given the building cultural historical value. So there are a lot of components that we have to take into account when working on this building. So this was actually in some floor plans the results of the research. So it basically says that all the blue lines we cannot touch. So you have the vaulted cellars on the -1 floor, and they're very historical and we can't really touch them. We have to leave them as is. And also the facade, we can do some things to bring back the most important features, but it's a preserved city site, and also because it's monumental, we have to leave it exactly as is. Then you see actually the yellow elements in several of the floor plans, and these are things that we can alter. So the internal walls, there are a lot that we can do something about as long as we leave the general concrete structure of the building intact. And there are also a lot of aesthetic features that we also have to leave intact. For example, I'm gonna get the light if you see it. This block right here that you see on each floor, it's actually a stairwell with stained glass windows, so that's quite unique, and we have to leave that as well. So with this research, we could look at the restauratieladder to see what we wanted to do. So looking at the new function of the building, a museum, we decided that renewal was the best option because we could leave the structure intact, we could leave the facade intact, and it would give us a lot of room to add on to that with the internal features to make it completely fitting with the new function, and also look at sustainability. And of course, we're not doing that alone, so we work in a team with, of course, the Children's Book Museum itself, Van Hogevest Architecten, Burgi, which is the contractor, Soda, they're actually a company that work really well with museums, so they look at the building physics, but also like the people who flow through the building, and the Municipality of Utrecht, because the building is actually owned by them. So to give you an impression, this is what the building looks nowadays. So you can see that the facade is actually still very good looking, and we're not allowed to touch that. The only exception is the plinth, because that's been altered over the years a lot. So they actually want us to bring it back to the previous times. But we have to use the same materials when we're doing anything with the facade. And also the facade on the other side, we also have to leave exactly the same, but the windows we can change because these have less monumental value. And this is basically where we're going to. So you can see that not a lot has changed. I'll let you see the old one again. It basically just gets to grow up, and we're doing some things in the plinth. Here you can see that the plinth that was originally there with the entrance on the right side, and then over time the entrance has moved and is now more towards the middle of the plinth. And in the new design we're actually bringing it back to the old state, so back to the right. Then the inside is actually very interesting because in the olden days they used to have this atrium in the middle, which also provided a lot of daylight in the entire building because it's quite a big building, so you need daylight. And it has this centerpiece at the top, which is a stained glass, at which the atrium is focused. But this is actually what the atrium currently looks like. So they lost the hexagonal shape and they just made a square and built it all the way up. So this is also something that we're going to bring back. So as you can see from the first and last picture, we're doing a lot to bring back the old values. And to give you an impression of what it will look like, so the entire museum will be based around the atrium. So all the exhibition halls will be there with actually the depot on the -1 floor, some retail options on the ground floor, so that's not all part of the museum. And then on the first, second and third floor, there are basically the exhibition halls with some offices. And then on the top floor, on the fourth floor, we're making a rooftop garden with the museum cafe and also a room where writers can rent a place where they can just sit and write with all the facilities they need nearby. So this is a 3D picture of the old building, and I'm going to show you now what we're going to add to that. So one of the improvements that we're making is that we're going to create a corridor that leads from the back, where the museum cafe will be, to the front, where the riders section will be. But this will also provide a glass corridor with views on the roof. And on the roof itself, we're going to create a lot of PV panels and some greenery for the environment and sustainability. Those are ways that we can add that in, despite all the restrictions that the monumental value gives us. So this is what the building should look like in 2027, and I hope that we can all welcome you there once it's done.
Then it's my turn. Town Hall De Paauw. Like I said in the beginning, this is one of the projects I work for. It's a town hall of Wassenaar, but it hasn't always been a town hall. It was actually built in 1556 by the Van der Druijse family as their home. It was actually a lot smaller by then. And in the years after that, it has been owned by a lot of different families who all made their alterations until it was bought by Prince Frederik in 1838, if I'm saying that right. Prince Frederik was one of the sons of Willem I. So the royal family actually lived here. Actually, the plot next door is the Van der Horst Paleis, also owned by the royal family. And Prince Frederik actually made Town Hall De Paauw like it is today. Until 1924, almost 100 years ago, then it was bought by the Municipality of Wassenaar. And from that day on, it has been their town hall. And a few years ago, they decided that their town hall had to be renovated to the glory days of Prince Frederik. They started by doing the exterior. So on the left, you see a picture of when Prince Frederik was living there in the 19th century. And picture on the right is a picture actually from last summer, where it was totally renovated by a lot of specialists. That's exactly what Machteld said. This is something you do in a few years. Like you need a lot of investigation. You need to know what color was used, what material was used in the 18th century. So a lot of archives were visited back then. Actually, the renovation architect that worked on De Paauw traveled to Germany because Prince Frederik used a Prussian German architect to do all his alterations on his home by then. And our architect who did the exterior actually went to the same palaces they have there to look for the exact same door handles, the exact same details on the rooftop. Like, it's very, very, very detailed work. So now the exterior is done, but there's also an interior, and that's where we started. This is the interior of the town hall, and you'd say, well, that looks pretty nice, and it does. These are like the main stairs of the building. In the middle, you see the wedding chamber. And on the right, you see burgemeester, the mayor, the office of the mayor. And actually, it looks really nice, but not everywhere. Like, since it was built as a home and now it's used as a town hall, it just doesn't really match. Like, there are a lot of things you see, like, for example, in the middle, you see the ceiling, like the historical ceiling, but they needed a kitchen there, so just put a wall in the middle. And then the ceiling keeps going to the other side, but actually the wall, it hasn't been done very nicely. So besides the fact that it's all very old already, they just want to do it right, and they want to restore the building to the glory days of Prince Frederik. Like I said, that's where we came in. So we started last year. Oh, why doesn't it? We started last year, and this is an example of a repair project. So we're not looking for like new materials to make an old building. We're actually looking for the old elements, like I said, recently, like looking for the exact same materials, looking for the exact same colors. If you walk through the building, you see a lot of investigations where, like, with a very small knife, they just like rip off all the layers of colors that has been used over the years to just find that exact right color that was used in the 18th century. And also that we don't do alone. We work with architect Happe Cornelissen Verhoeven, which is also a restoration architect. For installations, we work with Deerns, and for building physics and fire security, we work with LBP Site. Yeah, that's the design team that we work with. And they proposed 6 interventions where we all base like the whole restoration on. What they're doing is they move the original, how did you put the light? Howdy, yeah. Nowadays the entrance of the building is right here. And they propose to move the entrance to the right side, which is actually where the entrance was based originally. And if you do that, you can actually use the vestibule or the lobby that was also originally located right here as the part of the building, like the entrance of the building, where you move like all the public areas in the building. This is also the location where we moved. Doesn't really work. Where we moved the new cafe to, because nowadays there is no cafe based in the town hall, and they really want one. But since it's a monumental structure, you can't just open like a piece of like a wall and make a big room. And this part of the building has been built in the 1950s by the municipality itself, and therefore doesn't have a monumental value as the rest of the building. So that's why we are deciding to put the cafe right here, so we can open the façade as well and use this part of the gardens as a terrace. And by doing all that, we're actually going back to the historical structure of the building. Because if you look right here, where the new entrance or old entrance, you may see it as it is going to be originated here. Here you all see like very big and cold areas, which were the public areas in the historic, back in the days. And now we're actually doing that again. Like we're making all the big public areas as the council chamber and the wedding chamber. We're leaving that on this side of the building because the building was made for that. And while on the left side, you see all like the small rooms, which were also the cozier rooms, which were historically used as the bedrooms. And by using that same structure now for offices, we adapt the program of the building, the way it's used, to the historic way it was like initially designed for. The area in between, here says like the traffic area or the corridors, is used for the flexible work offices or workplaces, where you just have desks where you can sit on for a while just before you go into a meeting, for example. And then the hall next to the entrance nowadays will be designed for exhibition area. So if there might someday be a big exhibition, they won't use the new entrance because that's just not big enough anymore. And they'll do it right here, which is very pretty because here you can see the water that we saw in the picture. So you have an entrance on that side and on this side. Yeah, that works as well. Well, if you put all that together, you get something like this. So here you have the new entrance, the lobby, to the council chamber, to the new cafe, to the wedding chamber. And then from here on, the safety zone starts. Here you have the staircase, and you get into the work areas. Here the mayor. Yeah. This is also very nice. Maybe if I want one back. Originally, that's also like it has something to do with the historical structure of the building. In the 18th century, or even before the 17th century, they didn't know corridors. It was just room after room after room after room. And then within the years, when we started to need corridors because we wanted to like work in silence and be able to close the door, we put corridors. That's exactly the wall I showed you. And what we're trying to do together with the architect is getting also that historical structure back into the building. So instead of making a corridor right here and putting a new wall, adapting the interior, adapting the furniture to that historical structure of the building. So then you have a corridor which is still open, but you can still work or sit or have a meeting right here in silence. That was a little bit about De Paauw. And then we wanted to give you some main takeaways of our presentation. Preserve monumental values by research what you are allowed to alter and what needs to be remained. That's very important, the research part. We hope we give you some examples on how much of the process is based on the first investigations that were done at the beginning of the process. Be aware of different building materials and techniques. Take this into account in design and construction approach. And balance sustainability with historical values and also economical values sometimes. Use techniques that don't damage the historical structure. And with that, we came to an end. We want to thank you all for coming. We hope we could tell you something new and you learned something. And, well, we're still looking for new colleagues. So if you're interested, come up to us, give us a call, look for us on our website or LinkedIn, and maybe we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much for your presentation. First of all, I would like to ask if there are any questions regarding the presentation.